Today I am challenging myself to do both of these nightstands for under $10. I'm just going to be using a sample size of paint and BB Frost paint transformer to get these babies done. They're going to be awesome. I hope I can do it. So under $10, 2 nightstands. So you can see here, before we get started, that I've already sanded the top. That's because I'm going to do just dark wax on the top because I really want to see that gorgeous wood grain. I also did sand a little bit here on the bottom. The reason being, these were really terribly sun damaged. They had a lot of peeling, a lot of gross, just crap on them. So you can see in the photo why I sanded those areas, but you can also tell I didn't sand the whole entire thing, just the areas that really needed it. Let's get started. I'm going to be cleaning these with just a magic eraser. They got pretty dusty, especially from all my sanding, so I'm just gonna give them a good clean, make sure everything looks awesome before I apply any paint. So while I'm cleaning, you go ahead and like and subscribe to our channel. That way you can stay up to date on our amazing tutorials like this one that I'm hopefully gonna do for under $10. We've got some future ones in the works and some awesome ones that we've already done. So like and subscribe to our channel so you can be notified when our new tutorials go live. A couple of things that you want to do after cleaning but before painting is tape off your drawers, because you're not going to be painting the inside of there. So just tape off your drawers like this on all areas. Go ahead and remove your drawers completely. So you can see I taped it. Remove your drawers completely, paint them separate. Another thing is to remove the pulls. A lot of times you can keep the original pulls to the piece. These ones were super ruined, so I'm probably just gonna change them out. But just remove the pulls before you get painting. That way you can clean underneath, because there can oftentimes get crap or gunk under there. So now that everything is removed, I'll tape off my drawers. I'm ready to mix up my powder, and I'll show you how I do that now. Let's make our own chalk paint. This is really easy to do because I'm using BB Frost paint transformer. The reason that I'm adding this to my paint is so that I don't have to do all the sanding, priming, yucky stripping. Now remember, I did sand a little bit on here because it was super peely. If you don't sand or smooth those areas, that's what the paint will bond to. Now, a lot of pieces you don't even have to sand at all. This one had a lot of sun damage, so I did. But let's show how to mix up your own chalk paint. This is just the $3 sample from my local hardware store. So you really want 2 heaping tablespoons of BB Frost paint transformer to about 1.5 tablespoons of water. Now, what you're after here is really a donut glaze consistency. It's awesome. It's really not super scientific. If it's too watery, add a little bit more powder. If it's too powdery, too thick, add a little bit more water. If you're nervous, err on the side of too much powder. You really can't add too much. More powder will just help it extra bond. That donut glaze consistency, make sure to mix it all up. Perfect. The reason that I like to mix in these jars is so that I can tell it's mixed into chalk paint once it's in here. There's room to, when I pour my paint in here, shake it around. There's not room in these little guys to get this into here. These sample jars are just awesome. Pour your paint directly in here. So you'll know you have your chalk paint when all this white is removed. Now what's awesome about BB First Paint Transformer is you'll see here, this is not going to alter the color of my paint at all. This black is going to stay true to black. Just give it a nice little shake, make sure all the white is gone. A little crap on my jar. Perfect. I'm ready to get started painting. I'm just gonna pour my paint directly onto this paint tray because that way I use and waste a lot less paint rather than dipping my brush directly into this jar. So I'm just gonna pour my paint onto here and paint from this. I'm also using a medium-sized paintbrush. The medium-sized paintbrush is my absolute favorite size because it can get big pieces, small pieces, medium-sized pieces like these. Now, you might also want to have a small piece on hand, or small paintbrush on hand to get in some of these nooks and crannies, but for the most part on this one, I think I'm just gonna stick to my medium brush. So, I'm gonna get started. I'm gonna paint what we call cross-hatch strokes. Now that will promote self-leveling. I know, it looks just absolutely crazy here on this first coat, but trust me, it's going to look awesome when it's all done. Now this first coat, you can see how you can still see a little bit underneath. You want this coat to be thin. I'm telling you, make it thin. This is your bonding coat. This is what gets your paint stuck onto the piece. So don't worry if it's super thin. That's what you want. Be sure to also get in these little areas when you put the drawers back in. You don't want to see those. If you don't hit it too hard the first time, you will the second time. So I'm telling you, make your first coat thin. Paint in crosshatch strokes. Just get the paint on your piece. All right, my first coat is done and dry. I've used just about half of this sample size, so I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get it all done in just this sample size. My first coat is done. Now I'm ready to do my second coat. Now remember, you want your first coat to be fully dry, so just touch it, make sure it's fully dry before doing your second coat. If your first coat happens to start lifting, that can mean the paint wasn't fully dried and cured. Or it could mean that you're overworking your brush in your second coat. So your second coat, again, do those crosshatch strokes and just get another light layer on there. I'm having a feeling these nightstands are only gonna take about 2 coats. Really excited. Okay. I've decided I am going to do a little bit of distressing to this piece. I feel like it could use it, kind of needs it, I like it. There's a lot of grooves, things that I want to highlight. So I am going to distress with a 220 grit sandpaper. So the way that you do this is always use flat fingers. So like this, and then just go back and forth. So kind of like this, you can kind of see this start to come through. So just distress if you're going to any raised edges. Oh, see, like that looks cool. So any raised edges, things don't naturally distress inside these grooves. So only distress in these raised areas. And you can just go over and do any areas that you want to on your piece to add a little bit of character, depth, and dimension. have a really fun extra added surprise that I'm going to do on this one. I happen to have this stencil on hand, so I'm going to stencil in right here a really cute floral design. I'm also going to use paint that I already had on hand. So this is paint that I used actually for our project last week, and I just really like the light neutral color. So a couple things. I did cut this stencil to size so that it could fit right in here, and then I'm going to tape it down as well. So I'm going to throw some tape back here so it stays in place. And now I'm going to show you how I'm going to stencil on there. To stencil on my floral design, I'm going to use paint that I've already had on hand that is already mixed up. So I use the same mixing directions that I used earlier. And you're really just going to use such a small amount of paint here, if you can get your paint open. Such a small amount of paint. I'm also going to use a roller. So I'm going to roll through my paint, and then I want my paint roller, brush, whatever you're using, to be super, super dry. So I'm going to roll over the paper towel to get out most of the moisture. Now I'm ready to move on to my stencil. Make sure your stencil is taped down completely, and also you might want to hold it taut with your fingers, and then just go over your areas really lightly. Really lightly. You don't want any bleed through. I could actually use a little bit more paint here, but it's always better to start super, super light than super thick and have too much paint and have bleed through. So remember, I can always go over this area too. So I'm going to just go ahead and get this whole flower before adding a little bit more paint. Okay, I didn't get everything super thick. I kind of like it looking a little bit textured. So I'm going to go ahead and do my absolute favorite part and lift off this stencil. Oh my gosh. So freaking cool. Love it. Okay, that looks really cool. My stencil's done, everything's painted. Do you remember how I said I sanded the top because I was going to do just a dark wax look on it? This is one of my all-time favorite looks, dark wax on raw wood. So I'm going to be using our BB Frosh Premium Finishing Dark Wax and a large wax brush. So what you're going to do is you're going to want to butter the end of your brush with a wax wand. Just butter the end, get wax on your brush. And this is the same technique I'm going to do for the whole entire piece. I'm just going to start up top. So I'm going to start at one end, go all the way across, get the wax on there, just a little small area at a time, and then immediately wax off. So you want to think wax on, wax off. Just really start to see that grain. Oh my gosh, this is just gorgeous. So you'll know when the excess wax is removed, when your cloth begins to glide smoothly, it doesn't really feel tacky anymore, and it starts to shine. This is gorgeous. So I'm going to go ahead and do this whole thing all the way across in this dark wax look, and I'm obsessing over it. I've dark waxed the top and I'm totally obsessed with it. Now because I painted this black, I'm just going to go ahead and use dark wax on the whole entire thing, and I'll stay pretty true to this black. And here we go. You want to make sure that you do wax because that is what will seal and protect all your hard work. So you'll wax the same way that you did on the top, just a little bit at a time, and think wax on, wax off. Same way you did on the top. And I think I might even do dark wax over this down here. We'll kind of see and play with it a little bit, just to kind of add some of that depth to it.